Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for a virtual back to school night about our 8th grade American history class. I am so excited to be back on campus, to be starting the year with your students and jumping right into American history. I usually start by introducing myself. My name is Kirsten Rogers. I'm going to try and go through this a little quicker than normal, only because for the vast majority of my students this year, this is either our second or third year together. So we know each other a little bit already. Um, as you may already know, this is my 8th year teaching at Wardlaw Hartridge. I spent 6 years in 6th grade humanities before moving into full-time history, 7th and 8th grade American history last year. In addition, I also serve as a 7th grade coordinator, planning our 7th grade trip to Colonial Williamsburg and many of our advisory activities, working in close conjunction with our students' advisors. I also am the advisor for our Student Government and Publications elective, working with our student government on service learning initiatives and to put out our middle school newspaper, The Typewriter. Last hat I wear here, I also spent 6 years as a middle school and varsity cheer coach, although I have stepped away from the program in the last year or two because I have a young daughter at home. It's something I look forward to getting back to in a formal capacity pretty soon, and something that many of your children can attest. I still end up at many practices anyway, so I'm still pretty involved with the program. It's my own personal background. I am an alum at Drew University in Madison, New Jersey. I got both my bachelor's in anthropology there, as well as my Master of Arts in History Education. And I'm actually continuing my education a little bit this year. I have decided to tackle some hybrid learning just like your students are. And I'm working on a second master's degree from Montclair State in educational leadership. So I've got quite a bit going on, as you can see, and it makes me really ready and excited for a great year. Our 8th grade American history curriculum is absolutely fantastic. I think it is a program of study your children are going to absolutely love. We're going to pick up exactly where we left off last year, which means, because we did have a bit of a tumultuous spring, we're going to begin the year with what is traditionally the end of the 7th grade year, a study of the Civil War. And that's actually where your students are right now. We've been spending the last week or two talking about antebellum America. What did America look like, and how did people here live in the years before the Civil War? We'll spend the next couple of weeks looking at the issues and the problems in America that led to that conflict, how the Civil War was fought, before jumping into what is technically really the first 8th grade unit, Reconstruction. How do we put a broken country back together again? While that is a little bit of a tweak from our traditional curriculum, I think it's going to go really well. It's something we have done in the past in years where we've had other reasons where we maybe didn't get as far as we'd hoped. And we want to ensure that students have a full picture of American history, that we're not simply losing any piece of that 7th grade curriculum. Once we have walked through Reconstruction, we're really going to focus on the growth of America. We're going to look at the industrialization, the growth and development of how the labor industry grows, America's power on the global stage as an imperial power, and how America plays a role in both World War I and World War II. We'll round out the year by looking at the overall impact of World War II. How does that global conflict influence the way people live in America, including a study of the Cold War, a study of the Civil Rights Movement, and a study of the space race. And we'll try and get as close to today as we possibly can. A huge part of this curriculum will be current events, looking at ways to tie those historical events to what we're living through right now, how our country works and functions in 2020 or 2021, and what is the legacy of the events of American history that led us here, and what role do we play in navigating them today. As you may remember from last year, and please excuse me as I scoot my video, my classroom is one that is extremely project-based and experientially based. We do a lot of presentations, we do a lot of writing, we do a lot of analysis. I am going to put your students to work this year. Some of the highlights are class discussion. We're going to do a lot of discussion-based activity. And while it may look a little bit different in setup and layout than it did last year, as you can see in the picture, it's something we're still going to spend a ton of time doing. It is really important to me that your students are able to take what they read or take what they learn and have a good critical conversation about it. We'll also do a lot of work with primary source documents, documents from the historical time period we're learning about, so they can start to really critically analyze history on its own merits and not simply what a textbook or teacher tells them. We'll also do, as I said, a lot of project-based learning. These two pictures are two of my very favorite projects from last year. The first, the debt center picture, is from a project that we do during our unit on immigration, where students are tasked with working with primary source documents, with recreating historical artifacts, and taking on the role of an immigrant to the United States. It's a really fantastic project, and one that, while it may need to be tweaked slightly for some of our policies and procedures this year, I know your children will absolutely love and will get a lot of value out of. Another is a major project we conduct right before our trip to Washington, D.C. in March. We task our students with learning and studying in depth on one of the landmarks, monuments, or museums that we will see in D.C. Here you can see the U.S. Capitol building. Students are tasked with a twofold project here. They must research and create a presentation, and they must build a model of their landmark. And the model really becomes a dress rehearsal, because they use their model to give a presentation about their landmark in class to their classmates, and then they give it again live to the entire 8th grade and set of 8th grade chaperones while they're actually at their landmark in DC. So it's a really cool experience and really reinforces the idea that we're learning all of this because it's relevant to what we're doing in our lives. Many of you are already very familiar with PowerSchool. We've been using it for 3 years. Your students have been using it pretty extensively with me, and I'm certain that they've all given you a tour of this year's classrooms at this point. If they haven't, you should ask them to. I wanted to very briefly include our welcome page, which is where students can find Zoom links, our online textbook, and a calendar and to-do list of assignments, so that you see exactly where they are headed and what they need for success. All of our lessons will be posted in a weekly format, a page for every week of the calendar year. When students go to the weekly page, they will see their first assignment for every week. One of the silver linings to all of the changes we've undertaken this year is that I've been able to spend a lot of time moving to a flipped classroom model. This is an educational model that moves the lecture and the reading of a course to home, so that students can work on it in their own time, at their own pace, in a method that works for them, whether that's with a text or with a video, and frees up a lot of classroom time for us to review together and then have a lot of time to discuss and analyze and think critically as we work through assignments and projects together. This will be posted every week for them. This week, past week, you'll see it was just a video, but most weeks your students will have an element of choice, a reading or a video, a few options. But I think your students will enjoy having the agency to choose what works best for them, and I think they'll really enjoy how much time and space this gives us for an expanded time for discussion, for activities, for assignments in class. You'll see that there's a drop down on the left. There's also a day for every class of the week. We meet 4 days a week. Every page will have, every day, will have its own page. And everything your students need for success is there. Everything we'll do in class, whether it's a do now or a class assignment or reading, and the homework will all be posted to the daily page. Again, I really encourage you to ask your students for a little bit of a tour with this virtual classroom on PowerSchool, because they will be using it all of the time. All work is submitted through PowerSchool. All documents are accessed through PowerSchool. And so this is really critically important. It is also important because our gradebook is not live on PCR this year. It is, however, live to your students all of the time on PowerSchool. So I strongly suggest, as part of the tour, you ask them to click on that grades tab. Just a reminder of my contact information. I'm always available by email. I will always answer within 24 hours for both students and parents. For students, a reminder that when they email me, I do ask them to email me no later than 8 p.m. if they want a response that evening. Otherwise, I'll have to wait till the next school day. I know all too many of our 8th graders are up later than that, but I am not. So they should always reach out, be proactive. It is never the wrong time to reach out to me with a question or a concern. I'm always happy to help. And I am so happy to be spending this year with your students. I know that we are going to have a very, very busy year. But it's going to be busy with a lot of great experiences, a lot of things that they are going to really sink their teeth into and think deeply about our history and about their role as Americans living in this country. I am so looking forward to a great year, and I'm so looking forward to working with your students this year as they get ready for high school. Thank you again for joining me for a virtual back to school night. I look forward to seeing you and hearing from you soon and to working with your children this year.